Hi, I'm your host, Tim Ladich, and welcome back to the Route 281 podcast. Today's guest is someone with a remarkable reputation in the equine world, particularly within the Paso Fino breed. He's an expert trainer and judge who has worked across the country and internationally, evaluating and developing some of the finest Paso Finos in the industry. Rick brings a rare combination of national-level expertise and local roots, going back to his days as a 4-H'er at the Somerset County Fair. He's also the owner of R&S Paso Finos. I am happy to welcome Mr. Rick Shaffer. Today's episode is sponsored in part by SECHLER Insurance Group, LLC, your local independent insurance agency, proudly serving Somerset County and the surrounding area since 1931. With offices located in Rockwood and Somerset, SECHLER Insurance Group specializes in auto, home, commercial, farm, life, and financial services. So stop by, see Scott and Jason and their team for a personalized review of your insurance today. That thing gets tangled up and put in your way.
There we go.
All right. Rick Shaffer, R&S Paso Finos. Thanks for coming out and hanging out with me for a little bit.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say that Rick and I go back quite a ways. So I was thinking about this before you came, and so like my earliest memory of being over in your horse barn was when Josh would be your nephew, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
And my good friend growing up, we spent a long time together. And one day we were in your horse barn, and you had asked us to get some hay down. I don't know if you remember this, or it could have been your dad asked us to get hay down too.
I don't remember that,
anyway,
but I remember you and Josh.
You had some hay above where some of the horses and some of the stables are in the show barn there. I don't think you keep hay up there anymore, maybe because. But anyway, there was hay up above there.
Yeah.
So we decided to one would go up, chuck the hay bale down. The other one would try to catch it. We were probably 80 pounds at that time.
Sure.
5th, 6th grade, if that, And, I mean, we would just get leveled and laugh and carry on and, take turns going up. I don't know how many bales we got down, but, we were probably pretty beat up after that. But, yeah, so that was a long time ago. But, I just, the Paso Fino actually is an interesting breed. And I did a little digging, and I know that they're kind of different in a way, and you can talk to us about why they're different. But first of all, just maybe how long has your family been in the horse business? How did it start? And maybe something like that.
Yeah, sure. So when I was young, probably 3, 4, 5 years old, I have a brother, and Dad had got us ponies. And we started riding these ponies. So, I've been riding horses for a long time now. Yeah. And it just kind of grew from there. As Scott and I were growing up, we had quarter horses. Yeah. And when we talk about different breeds of horses, they all have something that breed kind of specializes in. So we'll get to the Paso Finos then, but we started out in quarter horses. Okay. And local shows. I was in 4-H, and actually 4-H was a big part of what I do now. Yeah. Make a living training and showing and judging Paso Finos. So just come up through the years there on quarter horses, and my parents, it was just a thing for us to do. My mom really never was into the horses. She likes the horses, but she never rode or anything. So my father and I were the ones that were really into the horses. And like I said, my brother, he rode there, and probably, I'm going to say about 12 or 13.
He eventually took the quads.
He eventually went over to the motorcycles and something with a motor, and so he went that route. And
they run out of gas, though.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I did that too, I had the dirt bikes and bicycles, and we had all that when we were growing up. But the horses just kind of stuck with me, and it was kind of Dad and I's thing. But it really wasn't a family tradition. It started with us. With you. And my dad, Dick, he really enjoyed his horses, and the quarter horses. They're great horses, and I still train a lot of quarter horses.
This episode is sponsored in part by SDC Building Center in Somerset, your hometown source for quality building materials. I use them for my own jobs and around the house, and they always come through. So if you're building, remodeling, or just doing something around the house, check out SDC Building Center in Somerset.
And we can get into it here a little bit later, what separates the different breeds. I mentioned earlier, every breed has something that it usually can do a little better than another breed.
Yeah, because not all horses are created equal.
No, they're not. And, a horse is a horse to a point, but then, again, those different breeds of horses do special things that they can do better than one another. So I'm going to say I was probably about 15, 16 years old, and showing horses, going around 4-H showing. We did some quarter horse shows, and my dad was riding then, and the quarter horses, when they trot, it's a little bouncy up and down. And so he wanted to get a smooth horse. So he started to do some research and found out about gated breeds. And again, we can talk more about that. But a Paso Fino is a gated breed. And just so happens, he knew a lady in just outside of Somerset that had 2 Paso Finos. And we went out to her place and looked at these horses, and I rode them, and they were smooth. It was smoothest thing I'd ever ridden up until that time. And Dad said, "Yeah, that's what I want." And he went out and he bought a 6-month-old colt and a 4-year-old gelding that was not trained very well. Let's put it that way. And that's kind of how we got started in the Paso Finos, and 40 some years later, I'm still training horses.
Yeah. Now, why is a smooth ride important? Now, if you've ever ridden a horse, you may say, okay, I understand why a smooth ride is important, but you go on a long ride especially, they call it saddle sore for a reason, right?
That's right.
You know what I mean? And
that's right. And the actual, when you talk about the smoothness of the horse, and I had mentioned earlier on a trotting horse, which quarter horses trot.
Now, is a quarter horse like your standard American?
Yeah, they're the biggest, most popular breed.
Yeah, because I think for most people, if you're not around animals or horses, you see a horse and you think, what kind of horse did a cowboy ride? You know what I mean? That's their perception of maybe horse riding or just a trail ride or something like that. But most people's perception of riding a horse will be probably derived from cowboys and Indians. You know what I mean? So
yeah, sure. And again, the quarter horse, they might not necessarily been registered quarter horses, but that's the type of the horse that the cowboys and the ranch horse, they do a lot of ranch work with them, cattle work, and the quarter horse is just so vast in the different disciplines that they can do, from racing to trail riding, to showing, western pleasure, to barrel racing, to cutting horses, to reining horses. There's so many different disciplines.
Like a utility style and like horse. It's just really diverse.
Yeah, they're probably the most versatile breed of horse there is. So, but when you talk about that, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated, the smooth ride comes from how they move their legs,
which you call gated,
which we call gait, and I'll explain that now because it's a little complicated. So just stick with me. Have any questions? Let me know. So when any horse moves forward, that is considered a gait. Okay. So we'll start out with a trot. A trot is a 2-beat gait. Okay, and when I say 2-beat, 2 of the horse's feet hit the ground at the same time, and then the other 2, and it's diagonal. So the right front and the left hind would hit at the exact same time.
Kind of like all-wheel drive.
Yeah. Then the left fore and the right hind would hit at the same time. So you get a 1, 2. And as you get that 1, 2, you get an up and down movement. Okay? And so that's a 2-beat gait. There is another 2-beat gait. It's called the pace. And the pace now is just on the same side. We call it lateral. So the right front and the right hind would hit at the exact same time. So it's right side, left side, right side. And the same time, the front and the back hit at the exact same time. So now you got a suspension. Again, the 2 feet, suspension, 2 feet, suspension, 2 feet. But the pace goes back and forth. So instead of going up and down, you go back and forth. Okay? So that's what a 2-beat gait is. All horses, any breed of horse in the world can do either the pace or the trot.
So they do that instinctively?
Yeah, that's just how
God
put them on this, or that's their DNA. That's how, and all horses can, and all breeds of horses can do that. When you talk about a 4-beat gait, now we talk about what we call, quote, a gait in a horse, or gaited horses. And there's probably 6 or 7 true gaited breeds of horses. And that 4-beat gait is what makes them so smooth. But let's go back to a quarter horse that trots. I can train a quarter horse for 10 years every day and never make it 4-beat gait. It's just not in their DNA to do that 4-beat gait. So the 4-beat gait, the horses that can perform that 4-beat gait, then are considered gaited horses or gaited breeds. Tennessee walking horse, that's a gaited breed. Did you ever hear of a Rocky Mountain? That's a gaited breed. Icelandic horses are a gaited breed.
And they're a bigger horse, right?
No, the Icelandics are smaller. They're more like, they're a horse, but they're more pony size, and they're real stocky. The Icelandics. I trained quite a few Icelandics. I have over the years, and of course Paso Fino is a gaited breed. And then when we put all those gaited breeds together, this is just my opinion. The Paso Fino, I think, is the most natural in that 4-beat gait that they give you. So when I go to train these horses, I don't really have to train them to do the 4-beat gait. I just train them to be consistent in that 4-beat gait. And so that's kind of the difference. And I'm going to throw one more thing in here. There is a 3-beat gait, and all horses in the world can 3-beat gait, and that would be a canter or a lope. Okay, so that's a 3-beat gait. So you have a 2-beat gait, trot, pace, 3-beat gait, canter, lope, and then you have a 4-beat gait. The 4-beat gait in each breed, the walking horses, the Paso Finos, the Rocky Mountains, it has a different name. So the Paso Finos, they walk corto and largo. Corto meaning medium speed and length. Largo means longer. That's our fast gait. We also have another gait. It's called Fino, which Paso Fino comes from. Fine step, or a short step. So the Fino is, and it's kind of funny, people that look on YouTube and online, that's kind of what pops up is those Fino horses, and we go down what we call a sounding board or a Fino strip.
That's what I saw.
And their feet are going 100 mile an hour and they're not going anywhere.
That's what I thought. It looked like the cartoon, the Roadrunner or the Coyote. Where any cartoon where the feet start turning really fast, it's not going anywhere. That's what I had in my mind.
Yeah, and I mean the ultimate Paso Fino would be able to stand still on that board, and his feet continue. I'm saying 100 mile an hour, but very rapid.
Yeah,
I mean that would be the ultimate Fino horse, as far as we call that's basically a show horse that's in the show ring. But people get the misconception because that's what you see online. If you go and look up a Paso Fino, a lot of times you see those Fino horses. But that's kind of a misconception, because the Fino horses, that's really a minority gait, and all Paso Finos can't Fino. Some Paso Finos that are bred just to Fino, they do that real short, rapid footfall. Up north, where we live here, and the Paso Finos that I have, we want them to cover the ground. We want to go from point A to point B as fast as we can get there. We don't want to take all day and do that Fino gait. So at R&S, my farm, we breed horses that can move out and do the Corto and Largo and not the Fino. The Fino's a great gait, and it's it's cool to ride.
When I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, when do you use that? Like going through the drive-through, like real slow. You're moving real slow. You know what I mean? Like, I get the idea. Like, it looks super smooth, and one lady was holding a glass of water while she's feeding, and that, and it's like it's steadier than I am just walking around that house.
Sure. At our shows, we talk about the shows and stuff then too. But at our shows, we usually have some fun classes when the competition's over, and that's always one of the water glass class or whatever. And you can just sit on those horses and they go around. So that's smooth even at the Fino, but the same smoothness as the horse moves out at the Corto or Largo.
I enjoyed watching the longer step better when I was watching the videos, because it just, like you said, here we want to cover a little distance. I'm like, when do I want to go that slow? Like, it's cool. It's pretty to watch. It's very neat. But I'm like, I'm more interested in actually moving. Yeah. And so that told me, like, okay, I could see why that would be important for cowboy. Or a rough rider or something like that who's trying to shoot off of a horse while it's moving. I mean, I would think that would have been like why they wanted that.
Yeah, sure. And, that smooth ride, even when we are going faster, it still should be the same smooth ride. But instead of going 1 mile an hour, as a Fino horse would go, I want to go 15 mile an hour down the road and still get that same smooth ride. And that's another thing that's very unique about the Paso Fino compared to other breeds. We can go from short, I'm going to use miles per hour, going 1 mile an hour to I have Paso Finos that I've gone 20, 22 mile an hour down the road, and it's the exact same gait. It's the exact same footfall. And to me, the quality of the Paso Fino is one that can do that. We call that a long string, or they can get really tight and get into that almost Fino gait, but then they can move out and do 15 mile an hour down the road. And that's kind of the type of Paso Fino that I want to raise and train and have been for years. So, but that's what makes the Paso Fino the most unique kind of horse breed out there. And that's what they're known for. And earlier I said, each breed has one thing that it can do better than another, or they are designed to do one thing. That's it, the natural 4-beat gait, and that's what gives you that smooth ride. And the other gaited breeds, the Rocky Mountains and the Tennessee Walkers, they're all smooth too, compared to like a trot. When they're gaiting, like a Tennessee walking horse, when it's into a flat walk or a running walk, it's very smooth also, compared to a trot. So anytime that any breed of horse can perform that 4-beat gait, that's what gives you the smooth ride. So, and then I said every breed has one thing so thoroughbreds, they're race horses. They're the fastest horse on long distance. Quarter horse, actually, the name quarter horse comes from a quarter of a mile. They're like the sprinters of horses. Yeah. And they're the fastest horses in that quarter of a mile. That's how the quarter horses. Okay. And so, do you see what I'm getting at? Yeah. Every horse has one thing that it can kind of do better than another. And there's some horses that are carriage horses. The Morgan horse, you can ride the Morgan too, but it's known for to pull wagons and carriage. And
what do the Amish use?
So the Amish like to get from point A to point B pretty fast too. So the standard breds that race on the racetrack, the pacers and trotters, a lot of the Amish buy those ex-race horses or horses that aren't as fast on the racetrack, and then when they get into buggy, they can get to town pretty quick.
I never thought of that. Because you get behind one, you seem like they're going really slow, but
Yeah, no, some of them really can get out. Morgans, the Amish use a lot of Morgans. And of course the draft breeds then come into play, working in the fields and stuff with the Amish. But yeah, they're more into the carriage horses, although I've sold Paso Finos too to some Amish.
Oh, really?
Mennonite people for riding.
Yeah, because your wagon wouldn't shake, or your buggy.
Yeah, sure. So, but that's kind of the difference between the breeds, and again, there's lots of breeds of horses out there, and each one of them have just one thing that they're noted for.
Yeah. So, what's the Kentucky Derby horse?
Yeah, those are thoroughbreds.
That's your racing horses.
Yeah, the racing horses, thoroughbred, and
that, like, when you watch. Okay, Yellowstone was really popular a couple years ago.
Yeah, sure.
And so one of the things that I think came out of that I noticed horse-wise is the way you call a cutting horse, where they...
Reining horses.
Yeah,
so they had cutting horses too, but...
They're working cattle, and that steer approaches that horse, and that horse cuts it off, or, like, I've never seen anything like that, where they run up and they can slide.
Sure.
And then they grab those reins from side to side, and it's like that. It's like the horse is doing it. The guy on it is like they're trained to just, I'm cutting that calf off no matter which direction he goes. Or is a lot of it in the reins too?
Well, a lot of it is in the reins, and that's you or me as a trainer. That's what I do, is to train those horses. But in those, like the reining and the cutting, those horses are so they're so specialized in that one event that after years of breeding cutting horses, and again, they're all quarter horses.
Okay.
But the cutting horses are bred to cutting horses. The reining horses are bred to reining horses, and it's very specialized. So me as a trainer, if I have good quality reining horses, I don't have to do as much work as if it's not a quality reining horse. They can, I can take any quarter horse and I can teach it to spin and slide, but they're probably not going to be as athletic as those horses that are bred specifically for reining, even though they're still all quarter horses. Yeah. And that's what I was saying. The quarter horse breed is so diverse in that. So, compared to the Paso Fino, and nothing bad against Paso Fino, because that's my favorite breed, and that's the one but we use them for show.
Yeah.
And we use them for pleasure.
Yeah.
There is some people that use them for cutting and stuff, but they're not going to be top of the line in the show ring when it comes to that. You can do a little bit of everything with a Paso Fino, but trail riding, because people that are trail riding want that smooth ride. So that's kind of the main thing that the Paso Finos are known for is the trail riding.
Yeah.
Plus then the showing, we have the show horses.
Yeah. So, like, when do you start training?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I raised a couple Paso Finos. I had 2 mares this year or last year in the spring that had babies. I brought them up to my place, the mother and the foal, Thanksgiving, and then I weaned them. So as soon as I wean them from their mother, their training begins.
And that's when they're done. That's when they're done nursing, drinking milk.
That's correct, and that's when their training starts. And again, the training, there's different methods. There's hopefully the end result of any horse is a safe ride.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we want in any horses, show horses, trail horses, or whatever. And as far as training goes, you know, it gets a little complicated, but every trainer has different like methods, but we still all want to get to that same one spot, that safe, rideable horse.
Okay.
So I start them as soon as I wean them.
And how old are they about? Like
6 months.
6 months, okay.
Yeah, anywhere from 4 to 7 months usually you wean those babies.
And by that time, are they used to you as a human? Because you're in, like, are
You
they
know, in different
somewhat tame? Do you go for them being tame, or do you want to let them alone? Like,
well, in different situations, and whatever situation you have. In my situation, we have 2 different farms, so the moms and the babies are down at my mom's farm, and so they get pretty wild because we don't touch them. There's no hands-on down there until they're 6 months old, so they can get, you know, a little wiry. And then when I bring them up and wean them, again, I said that's when the training starts. Now, since Thanksgiving, I've worked those horses almost every day. You know, a lot of times on the weekends not, but the weekdays, almost every day I work those young horses, those weanlings, and only up to about a half an hour. The younger horses, 15 minutes to a half an hour. The more you can work with and the less time is better. So that's what those babies get at my place. Now I'm just getting ready to take them down. I think I just told you tomorrow. I'm actually going to take them back down to my mom's, and they will get out in the field, out in the pasture, and they probably won't get handled for another 2, 3, 4 months. I like to go down to that farm and at least get them in, brush them and stuff, you know, once a month, twice a month. But basically they just grow up down there until they're able to ride, which is 2.5. I usually wait until they're 3 years old till I start. So they just kind of go down there and grow up in the, I call it down the mountain.
Yeah.
We take them down the mountain, and there's a nice stream that runs through there, which that's what they drink out of. So they get used to the water, and it's really in my situation a really good way to raise horses. It wouldn't hurt though if you had that baby weanling at your place and you work with it, you know, until it's 3 years old. That doesn't hurt the horse. It actually is good for the horse.
Yeah.
But in my situation, I like to just let them grow up and, you know, just take some time off before they get into their serious training, which when I say serious is to put them under saddle and start riding them.
So what, like I'm thinking, you know, you hear wild horses. Like, what's the first thing you do when you say, today we're going to train? Like, you bring them, wean them, and then you spend a little time with them, but not all that much, really, like you said, until they're about 2.5 years old. So you now take this horse, and do you guys already have a sense of its attitude, or?
Oh yeah, you get within the first 2 weeks of working it, you get the sense of their attitude, if they're going to be, you know, more laid back type of horse or more sensitive type of horse.
And they're all a little different.
Every one of them's a little different. That's what makes my job as a trainer. That's what I enjoy most. Is every horse I get out is a little bit different. My end result and my what I call my foundation exercises, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. I do that with all of them, but every one of them's a little different, and you know, so my approach to each horse, I have to either, you know, sometimes make horses more sensitive, or I have to try to calm them down. So then with my body and the way I work that horse is different.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I enjoy most about working horses is everyone's different.
Yeah.
And so it makes it a little bit unique.
Oh yeah, it would be like, so it's almost, there's somewhat of an art form to this, isn't there?
You know, it really, training horses is...
Yeah, when you're reading an animal, you're reading, I mean, what kind of signs does it give you to say I'm a laid back horse or I'm an uptight horse? Like,
yeah, so and I'm just going to use Paso Finos as an example here now. Paso Finos are known to be a little bit more up. We call it brio. It's energy within that horse.
Kids today call it aura, I think. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, with other kids,
yeah. Well, Paso Finos are a Spanish bred horse from South America, and
So they're going to be up.
so there's, they have brio, spice to them. So when I first start working them, I have two babies there now, two weanlings, and just to give you an example, when I go into the stall to get them out, the one is standing there at the stall. She's wanting petted. She's real relaxed. I put the halter on her. The other one, when I go in the stall, she goes clear back to the end of the stall. She's very standoffish. I got to really go in and be, just real nice and easy, get the halter on her, and she's fine to do that. But if I would, that's where you as a trainer or the handler's got to adjust your body. On the first filly, I just open the door, walk right in, she stands there. If I do that to the second filly, she's up against the wall. So I got to be really calm and quiet, and I tell that within the first 2 or 3 times that I work with them, and the Paso Finos that have the brio, and brio is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's more spirited, and usually they're a little bit more sensitive. So when I do go to start working those horses, I have what I call my foundation exercises, and I do that with every single horse, whether it's a baby or say a 10-year-old comes in for training. If it's never had that foundation work, I do that. Even if it has had that foundation work, I refine it. And, I just make sure that every horse can do those exercises. And we'll get into that. So when I get a horse out, the first thing that I want it to do is to give the pressure. So as I pull a little bit on the lead rope and the halter, I want that horse to come in towards me. That's how I'm going to teach that horse to lead. So a lot of times on babies, when you pull on them, they want to pull back on you. Okay, so you can't just hold on and pull them. As babies, my Paso Finos, they probably only weigh, I'm going to say, 300 pounds, So I can actually, if I really want to pull one around, I can, but that's not the best way to teach them to lead. I'll put a lead rope around their hind quarters and pull on that, so I'm pulling the whole horse instead of just pulling on the front of the horse. So training's all about, training any horse is about pressure and release. So when I apply a pressure, I want that horse to give to that pressure. And when he gives to that pressure, that's the release, and that's when I praise him. And this, from trainer to trainer, is different too. What's a praise? To me, when that horse gives the pressure, I just let it stand there for 3-4 seconds. That's its praise. Some people give them treats. Some people pat them on the neck. I'm not saying any of that's wrong. It's just whatever works for you. But the release, when that horse gives to that pressure, that's when we have to reward that horse by me, again, not doing anything. I just don't do anything. I just let them stand there. They get to realize if they give to that pressure, they're not going to get any more pressure applied to them. And so leading the horse is the very first thing, we on the weanlings and babies. And then we do what we call flexing the horses. I bring their neck and their head left and right to where they can touch their shoulder. And then I can control, I want to control their hind end by moving their hips around. And I want to control their front end by moving their shoulders around. So we do 360s. And those are what I call my foundation exercises. And once I get that horse doing and giving to those pressures on the ground, then each time I get them out, I just try to get it to the best of their ability and to get it as soft as possible. And so that's basically what I do with horses. And there's a lot of other things, desensitizing them. You get I got a Walmart bag on the end of a crop, and I rub that over them and desensitize them to different things, tarps and stuff. So that's part of.
Is that why you play the radio all the time?
The radio, it kind of relaxes the horses. I have a radio going 24/7 in the barn.
For the donkeys back there, but and that's where I got the idea. It's like, maybe that'll help. But
Yeah, it does. So those are, training exercises, and then once they become of age, like I said before, 2.5 to 3 years old, and everyone has a different opinion when to start riding a horse. That's mine, 2.5, 3 years old, especially with the Paso Finos. We didn't talk about this, but is different breeds of horses or different size of horses. Yeah. So quarter horses. They come in all sizes too, but the Paso Fino is a smaller breed of horse. They're not a big breed of horse. I would say 800 to 1,000 pounds, and anywhere from 13.3 to about 14.3 hands is what a Paso Fino, the size of them.
Can you explain the hands?
Yeah, there's 4 inches in a hand.
Okay.
And back in the old days, that's how they measured horses. Yeah. But 4 inches in a hand. Okay. And that, when we say how tall is your horse, right. Well, that's normally, you can say inches, but normally we hands. That's how you talk about the height of a horse.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of people, they don't.
Yeah, they hear it.
They just don't understand it.
How is that measured in hands?
Yeah.
Which you always.
And then the other thing is, where do you measure a horse at?
It would be hard to measure the horse with your feet. You'd have to get right. So it was just easier. They pace things off in feet. Yeah. And then they measured the horse with hands. It's pretty rudimentary.
Yeah. And, where do you measure a horse from? The standard where you measure all horses from is the withers of the horse. Okay.
Which is where?
That's the whole horse. It's right where their neck ends. It comes into their back.
Like the shoulder, top of the shoulder.
Top of the shoulder there is the withers. And if you ever, the next time you at my place, or take your hand and you'll feel a little kind of a flat spot there on those withers, and then that's where you measure them from.
Okay.
Sure.
Cool. Yeah. So they're a little bit smaller. I did notice that. Like obviously, I've noticed being over at your farm, you also trim Polly's feet.
Yeah.
What is Polly about? 6 hands? I don't know. 7, 8.
Yeah, I'd guess something like that. Yeah. 7, 8 hands.
She's a miniature donkey.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how you measure horses. Again, the Paso Fino is not a real big horse. A lot of people have the misconception, though, of smaller horses, breeds of horses can't haul as much weight. I guess that's true to an extent, but saying it
in ratio, it might not be.
All right, an 800, 900-pound Paso Fino that's, say, 14 hands. I'm 200 pounds, and they can haul me all day long anywhere I want to go. Of course, you can get to the top end where you probably wouldn't, if you're a 350-pound guy, you probably wouldn't want to buy a Paso Fino to ride, right. But people think, myself, like I said, 200 pounds would be too big for a 14-hand horse, but that's not true. Yeah. The Paso Finos are very... They're really good as far as endurance and stamina and power go. And we're seeing now in the last, I'm going to say 10, 15 years, a lot of them are used for endurance riding, long distance 100-mile rides. And getting back to the different breeds, the Arabian breed, in the endurance world, they're the number one. The Arabians can go the longest distance, but the Paso Finos, that's an area that they really excel in also.
Is that like due to the environment that they're originate from?
Sure. A lot of that has where they originated from, and yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So what's it like getting on a horse that's never had anybody on its back before?
Yeah, so that's probably 60% of my business is starting horses that have never been ridden. This was several years ago. I have a training contract. When horses come into the farm, people sign a training contract, and I had added up those contracts. I had kept them, and again, this is going back 5, 6, 7 years ago, but there was over 800 horses that I've started under saddle. That's a lot of horses, and of course it's more than that now.
Yeah.
So again, that's probably 60% of my business is starting horses that have never been ridden. And
yeah, that's got to be. I would think that would be a little bit of pressure to say, okay, this horse is ready for you to get on, and then you do your job to train the horse. Somebody gets on who doesn't know how to ride or what they kind of assume a little bit of like responsibility to do things properly. The horse is trained. I mean, the rider's always trained. Right?
So this is a little funny in a way, but it's really not. The easy part for me is to train the horse. The hard part is to train the rider to ride the horse. It really is.
Yeah.
And
reading people's harder.
When I'm train horses, I like for the owner, whoever's going to ride that horse, to come to my farm, and there's no extra charge for that. That's included in my training fee for them to come and learn to ride their horse. It doesn't really do me no good to keep a horse for 4 or 5 months, get it going good, and don't have the rider riding that horse and showing them, the different. And like I said, every horse is a little different. Even though my cues might be the same, but let me just give you an example. One horse, I might have to put 2 or 3 pounds of pressure. One horse with my leg or my reins. Another horse, I might only have to put 1 pound of pressure. So I need to tell the rider, the handler, to only put 2 pounds of pressure on this horse, or put, So, yeah, I really like for the owner, the rider, the handler to come to my farm and work with me and the horse. Yeah. I really don't like just training the horse and sending it home.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and again, I'm not putting any trainer down or whatever, but a lot of trainers train the horse, send it home.
Yeah, that's like
and it just, for me, that doesn't make sense. And over the years, it's worked better if I get that rider. And listen, some horses and riders just don't match.
Yeah.
And it might be their own horse that I'm training, but in the end, they might not match.
Why is it? Like, what happens?
Some horses that are very sensitive. Yeah. If you take a horse that's very sensitive, you need to be the type of person that can be relaxed. If you can't relax and you're all up, you and that horse probably are gonna.
And these horses sense that.
And that horse senses that. Yeah, he can actually feel that through your body when you're in the saddle, through the reins in the saddle on your legs.
Yeah.
You can actually
actually really cool.
Transfer that to the horse, and so. It's kind of a little bit of a harder situation to match horse and rider, especially when I'm selling horses. And I sell horses, but I'm not a horse trader where I go out and buy 10 horses and trade horses.
You raise them for kind of a specific purpose, and if a customer has that need or whatever for that breed.
Right, and my own personal horses, a lot of times I don't even have to. I don't even advertise them because I have clients wanting that type of horse, and if I know it's that type of horse. But I get a lot of client horses that say, hey, Rick, this horse isn't working out for me. Can you find a good match for him? Mm-hmm. So I do sell horses for clients and stuff, but I try to match those two, horse and rider, together. And I can't do that over the internet. And the internet's great, don't get me wrong, and I'm a little bit old school, but I like for you to come to the farm, you ride the horse, let me show you, and then I can say, hey, I think you're a pretty good match for this horse, or I can say, hey, I don't think you're a good match for this horse.
Which is to their benefit to know beforehand, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, it is.
Yeah, right. I would think, like, if I was considering a horse, I'd want somebody who knew horses to say, oh, you seem pretty relaxed. You might like this old gal over here who's pretty relaxed, or skid it, a little jumper. You need a relaxed person. Is the opposite true? Like, you can take a horse that's super relaxed and you find somebody who's a little bit antsy and give them that horse because it's not going to respond as much to their.
Yeah, it's always easier if the horse is naturally more laid back. It's always a little bit easier to find a match for that horse than the sensitive, hyper type of horses. Those horses take just a little bit more skill, knowledge to ride those horses. So if you look on the internet and the horses for sale, usually they say a beginner rider, an intermediate, or advanced rider. But someone's opinion of usually their self of being a beginner, intermediate, that's a lot of times different than my opinion of what a beginner, intermediate.
They might inflate it.
So, it's hard to unless I see the person and the horse,
Yeah.
and it's hard for me to tell that horse. Now, I said about the weanlings, I could tell in 2 or 3 days, but if a horse that I've never seen and say it's 10 years old and comes to me, it takes me 2 weeks to a month till I really get to know that horse to see what type of horse it is. So, but again, that's the fun part of me of training horses. They're all just a little bit different.
Yeah,
all a little bit different.
And they use horses sometimes. I don't know about the Paso Fino breed specifically, but like they use, like you hear this, and I don't. You can say if this is a thing or if this is just like for therapy. Is that like, why do they do that with horses? Like,
yeah, so horses are good therapy for different types of people.
Yeah.
I think this is just my opinion, and I don't know 100%, but a horse is a bigger animal, and when you work with that horse, your fears or whatever of a bigger animal being in front of you, it just makes you afraid because of the size, and after a while, you learn that horse is more of a companion type of horse. It just really helps you mentally.
Yeah.
But I think just getting out and working horses just mentally helps anybody.
Right.
It's
not about you anymore for a moment, and you're focused on.
It's another mind.
Yeah.
So not only your mind you have to work with, you're working with another mind. It's not like a machine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't,
Right.
So that has a lot to do with it too. There's two minds involved, and it makes it different.
You ever see I say dogs can sense fear. Do horses sense?
Sure.
Just didn't want to go around somebody or didn't want to,
Sure. Yeah. Sure. The horses can sense different things like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And horses, they can remember you. Like I have these two babies, they'll be together. I can separate them for a year or two, and when I put them back together, they know.
Yeah.
They know each other.
Yeah.
They remember that.
Yeah.
And they remember people too. If I have a horse that I trained and I sell that horse, and a couple of years later the horse comes back, and he remembers who trained him. And
yeah, I heard this from a veterinarian at the farm once, and he said, I heard him say what got your goat, and I didn't know this, but he explained to me that at the time, or back in the day, if a family could only afford one horse, they had to put a goat in with it. So they were companions. And that eased the horse or calmed the horse down to be with another companion. And if you couldn't afford two horses, you just got a goat. And so if you took the goat away, the horse would misbehave.
Yeah.
And so that phrase came, what got your goat?
Yeah.
Did you ever hear that? That's the thing.
That.
So if you were a one-horse family, you had to have a cheap little goat with it.
Sure, and that's very common today. People that have one horse usually have a goat or a donkey or something as a companion. And horses are herd animals, so they're herd animals. It makes sense for them to not be as happy by themselves. Although I've seen horses by themselves and live completely healthy, fine life. But, they are herd animals, so they probably would prefer other...
If they're by themselves, are they around humans? Most likely, yeah.
Right, and that's the companion.
Yeah,
you become that companion then. Yeah. But, if I'm raising horses, I don't isolate horses, one here, one here, one here, one here. They are in a group.
Right. So how did you get into train, and you have your your business there? Then you got into judging, and how do you become a good horse judge, or what are you judging actually?
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you my experience from judging.
You know, I learn a lot on this podcast, but one thing I've learned over the years as a contractor is that you're only as good as the materials you use and the people you work with. That's why I go to SDC Building Center in Somerset. Whether I'm remodeling an interior or adding curb appeal to a home by putting on a porch or extra storage and building a pole building, they've got everything I need for my business. So whether you're a contractor like me or just tackling a weekend project around the house, head into SDC Building Center, tell them the Route 281 podcast sent you, and you'll see why they're the go-to place for builders in our area.
It started in 4-H. I think 4-H is a great program. Yeah. I come through the 4-H program, and that's where I started horse judging. There was a horse judging team. And getting back to every breed of horse is a little bit different. And when we judge these horses, I'm talking conformation, which means their body. How their body, their legs, their neck and head, and how that all comes together. So every breed has a standard. And you have to learn as a judge that standard for each particular breed. If you're judging different breeds, if you're only judging one breed, you need to know the standard for that particular breed. So back in 4-H, when we was on the 4-H horse judging team, and our team actually, I think, placed second or third that year. We won the Pennsylvania and went on to the Nationals and was second or third. So I was on a pretty good team right off the bat. You know, I had good experience with that. But then I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s when I actually got my license to judge Paso Finos. And it's just interesting for me to look at every single horse and, come up with the best qualities. And one thing that I'll say about judging, the best thing is I look for the qualities of that breed.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't want to judge on the negatives. You always want to judge on the positives. So if I have two horses and they're pretty close, I'm looking at the positive things, not the bad things of that horse. Although you got to take that into consideration a little bit. And let me just give you an example. If I have two horses and we want straightness in their legs, okay? We don't want their front feet toeing out or in.
Because all this pretty much goes towards how they're going to perform as for the intended use, right?
That's correct. Yeah. And we call it form to function.
Okay.
All right. So the straighter the legs, that's the form for them to be able to be better race horses if they're a thoroughbred, to be better cutting horses if they're a quarter horse, or the straight good conformation on a Paso Fino that helps them to gait. So those are the things that we're looking for. And then again, every breed has a standard. So let me just say the Paso Fino. Paso Finos are a breed that goes with their neck and head up. Yeah. They're not a breed that goes with their neck straight or down. Okay, so if I'm judging two Paso Finos and I have a Paso Fino, his neck's up and just beautiful and comes out of his chest just right, and I have another one that's maybe here, this is the better. Yeah. So I'm going to reward that by placing that horse higher. That doesn't mean this is a bad horse. It's just this.
That's the standard.
That's the standard. So we go to that standard.
Any of the videos that I was watching, and like the videos that I found were of show horses. I mean, that guy, he's up here and he's trotting away, and it's pretty neat looking. Sure,
and again, and that's a big thing. Headset on the different breeds are different. Excuse me. A thoroughbred, when it's racing, it's head straight out because it's going as fast as it can go. It's not up here to where it's collected because then it can't go as fast. It's here just going out. So that's what I mean. Each breed, the standard's just a little bit different. Normally the legs, the straightness of the legs and stuff like that are the same across all breeds. We don't want crooked legs, and of course there's different terms for that, pigeon-toed and sickle-hawked, and those are the things as a judge that you really need to evaluate. But the thing for me, and I just got done judging our Grand National Show back in October down in Ocala, Florida.
Yeah.
And you get selected to judge that, and I was selected this year as one of the, I think there was seven of us, 8 of us judging that Nationals.
And Florida's a kind of a hot spot for horses.
That Ocala, Florida, Ocala is, I think, might be the #1 horse site in the United States right now. I don't know why,
but maybe you wouldn't think Florida, for horses in the United States, I guess. But maybe it's just the environment. But do people in that area use a lot of horses on a day-to-day basis, or is it more for?
Yeah, there's a lot of different breeds of horses in the state of Florida, and the Paso Fino originated from South America. So Florida was the closest place. Yeah. So the population, and I could be off on this a little bit, but I think there's about 65,000 of them registered. Wow. And that's in the United States. And I'm going to say 50% of them are probably in the state of Florida. And then the other 20-30% just Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Them 4 states probably have 80% of the Paso Finos, and then the other 20 are throughout the rest of the United States. Wow. So Paso Finos down south, again in those 4 states, that's where the most population is of Paso Finos.
I guess that makes sense if they're coming from South America or Puerto Rico, or they end up in Florida.
So that's where the Nationals is this year. It's going to be back up in Tryon, North Carolina, which I'm happy for, because that's not even half the drive down there. It's a long drive to Ocala, especially up here. And I've shown, this past year I judged it, but for the last 3 or 4 years prior to that, I'd taken anywhere from 3 to 7 horses down to Ocala, and we showed down there. But I really enjoy the judging part of it. Those are the best horses in the United States that you get to judge. So it's really a privilege.
Oh, I would imagine,
to be able to see the best horses in your breed.
Yeah.
So
even
I enjoy that.
to get selected to judge, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's a cool honor.
Yeah.
Congratulations, because that would be neat. Because like you said, that you're judging one of the best shows or one of the, I guess, most premier.
Yeah, sure. And the regions vote on the judges, so the different regions throughout the United States get so many votes, how many ever members they have, and
how do they get to know you or see you see you judge? Is it just at shows
Well, I've been in it for a long time, since I was 15, 16 years old, started showing the Paso Finos, and we are a small breed, so even though it's throughout the United States, we pretty much know everybody. Okay. If you go to 2 or 3 shows a year, you know pretty much, not everybody, but you understand the trainers and the big farms and stuff. You get to know each other, and after you do that for 30, 35 years, people get to know you. I got my judging license back, I think I was in my early 30s when I got this, so it's been 25 years or so I've been judging the horses. But and then each region, every year when they have shows, they get to pick whatever judges they want. And so, I usually judge a couple shows a summer. Okay. As far as the judging goes, I'm talking just the Paso Fino, the sanctioned shows, but I used to do a lot of 4-H. Fair. They always get me to come over to the fair and judge, and so I judge all breeds of horses, but Paso Fino is what I specialize in.
Do you see a lot of Paso Finos at Somerset County Fair?
No, but the ones that are there, I know, because I've either sold them or I know every horse in the area. Yeah. If it's a Paso Fino. Yeah.
What's the most popular horse around here? Probably the quarter horse.
Quarter horses
in the Somerset County.
Even in Somerset County, quarter horse. Now there's a lot of those quarter horses. And there's a lot of horses we haven't really talked about that. They might not be registered, but they're still quarter horse. Yeah. You know what I mean? They just don't have papers. Right. And papers, papers just show you the lineage of the horses going back. Our papers go back, I think, 4 generations. So if you're a breeding facility or whatever, that's very important, the lineage of the Paso Fino or whatever to kind of decide to get what you want. If you want a top show horse, you can go and look at the pedigrees, and you can say, hey, this horse is probably going to be bred to be a good show horse. If you want a good quality, just a good quality horse, you can also see that in the pedigree. But there's lots of horses, and especially, I say quarter horses, but in this area in Somerset County, there's quite a few non-registered horses, and that doesn't mean that they're, any less quality. It's just that you can't go back and look.
They don't have any records.
At the records. As a Paso Fino owner and trainer, though, I always have papered horses. If you go to breed that horse, especially in your females, usually you can get a little bit more money. The value is a little bit more than even unless you have a top stallion, but a little bit more than, say, a gelding, obviously, because you can't reproduce.
Right.
And then the other thing with registered animals, registered horses, is if you participate in almost any sanctioned event, even trail rides now, a lot, you don't need to be papered to enter the event, but if you enter that event, you get points or something, a year-end award. Yeah. So it's kind of important to have papers that way.
For instance, my kids show dairy cattle.
Yeah.
And they're all registered, so that you can't enter a lot of state shows without having a registered animal.
Yeah.
And but
same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing in the horses. Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, I forget what I was going to ask you. Like, how many horses are, when you say you judge like that national show in Ocala, how many horses are at an event like that?
So I think this year we had almost 600 horses at that show. And for Paso Finos, that's our biggest show.
Yeah.
Normally when we go to shows, if we get 100 horses, 150 horses, that's normally a show for us. Mm-hmm. Again, we're not a very big breed as far as numbers go. Mm-hmm. So those are the numbers at our show. And the nationals at 600. I can remember years ago that we had 1,000 horses. I would say that was probably our max, 1,000, right around 1,000 horses. But compared to like a quarter horse show, you can go to a quarter horse show around here and have 100, 200 horses in a class. Just a really not a local, but an in-state show. Yeah. So again, we're just a small breed, and that's why everyone knows everybody too. Yeah. That's the number. I think it was close 600 this year at the Nationals.
Now, like I know what I was going to ask you. So the paperwork, like, why have the paper? Like, what do those papers say that would tell you something about that horse?
So I'm talking Paso Fino here now. Yeah. We have a registry, and we can go into that registry, into the computer, and get on, and you can look up the show record of those horses. Okay. That's the main thing that you can do. There's lots, other things you can do, breedings, see how many, like a top stallion, you can see all the mares that he bred.
Okay.
And how
they scored at a show. And
how many points. It's all on points, how many points that horse scored at that show. And then, and this gets a little bit complicated, we really haven't mentioned on it. And this is all breeds, really, but we have different divisions in the Paso Fino. And when I talked about judging, I was talking about conformation. We call that Bea Forma. It's really a halter class. Okay. You're not riding the horse, you're just judging the conformation. So that's one division. And then we have the Fino division, which we talked about earlier, the horses that don't. So we have a division that's just the Fino horses. And then we have a performance division, we have a pleasure division. So those are the four divisions that we have, like at our national show.
You ever see one horse win all divisions?
Years ago you've seen that, and I talked earlier today, like I like a horse that can get almost Fino or Fino and Largo at the same time. Right. There is certain horses that can do that, but you don't really see that a lot. If they're Fino, they're in the Fino division. We see some changing from performance and pleasure because the three speeds that they ask for is the Walk, Quarto, Largo. you do that in performance and pleasure. So then you see some performance horses maybe go pleasure, some pleasure horses might then go performance. But the Fino division, that tight gait and rapid footfall, usually if it's Fino, it's Fino.
Mm-hmm. If
So
somebody bought a registered Paso Fino and they wanted to show it, and they very little experience, what class would they want to enter first? Or
yeah, and again,
it on the horse.
It could be a performance horse. I would have to see the horse move and the action and stuff like that.
They really have to know the horse before they say, okay, I want to enter it in this class or this. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But we do have classes in each division, Fino, performance, pleasure, that are first year or amateur trained. So they don't show against horses or people that have showed several years. You know, it's kind of like a beginner class or a first time. Yeah. We offer those at every show. So if you just buy a Paso Fino and you have no idea, you can sign it up for the amateur trained and go in, and then hopefully the judge or whatever say, hey, you know, you got a great horse here, but it's a pleasure horse. That's the division you need to show it in. Right. Or it's, you know, whatever division.
I just know, like, growing up showing steers and cattle, like the judge, for the most part, is really judging the animal, yes, right? For its beef quality or for its dairy way it's going to grow up and produce milk and be able to have a lot of babies and, you know, calves.
Sure.
But there is a showmanship class where they kind of judge you on, because if you could have a great animal, and if you don't really show it right, it doesn't look its best.
Sure.
Where, like, on a horse, you're kind of, is that the same thing for a rider on a horse? You got to be a good rider to get the best performance out of that show horse?
Sure. So, and this gets a little complicated, but I'm going to use performance and pleasure. The amateur gets on it and rides the horse nice and relaxed and easy. It would probably do better in the pleasure division. But me as a professional, I can get on that horse. I can say, okay, let's collect up. Let's bring that brio out. Mm-hmm. And it might be a performance horse when I ride it.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So it can be different on the rider. Whoever's riding that horse, that can be different.
Yeah. Because I know, like, my girls in 4-H, like, they're kind of 4-H leader, and the lady that they show cows for, like, they work with them, actually, on, you know, how to properly show that animal, because it can actually make all the difference if you're up in that top, you know, 5 animals out of 35. The difference between first and fifth place a lot of times could be the showman.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. And even in our classes, I'll take the pleasure division. If you give me an average rider and you put that average rider on a top quality horse, okay, and then you take an advanced rider and you put him on a poor quality horse, in the pleasure division, they're still looking for the best performance of the horse, even though the rider can enhance that. But that average rider that's on that really good pleasure horse is probably still going to win. But then we have what we call horsemanship classes. Now, those classes, it's not on the horse, it's on the rider. So you take that really good quality horse and you put that average rider on it, and then you take that not as quality horse and you put an advanced rider on it. That's when that advanced rider will usually win over, even though it's a great horse, the rider has a big difference to do that. So we do have, especially in our youth division, we have that. And even in the adult division, we have what we call horsemanship classes. And that is a lot on the handler and how that handler rides the horse, controls the horse.
You have to be able to judge both classes. Right?
And I judged, right. I have to be able to judge both classes. Okay. And so there's definitely a difference when different riders ride the horses.
Yeah. It's kind of fun over at the fair to watch these little kids come out for, you know, they kind of just the peewee showmanship, you know, because they can actually show an animal. They can, you know, once they're of age, you know, and they're pretty little, they can actually show open over there now, which they don't have to. They could be any age. But you could take a nice animal. They could actually win with that animal. But then they have the showmanship class where these little kids come in and just, you know, it's pretty cool.
Well, I judged the fair this year.
Yeah.
I've judged it, I don't know,
Yeah.
20, 30 times.
Yeah.
But it's fun to watch those little
Well, that's how
kids
they get
come out,
started, you know.
and that's
You never
exactly
know
right.
whenever that love for whatever is going to kick off. And, you know, like for you, it's a young age where it stuck with you your whole life.
Sure.
Mhm.
And, I really encourage these kids. Horses today are an expense.
Yeah.
It's expensive to have horses, but I've seen a decline in the youth in all horses, and in 4-H and in the Paso Finos. So I really try to promote that youth, because that's the future of the breed, of any breed of horse. So, at the farm there, we're not a big lesson where we do a lot of lessons, but I do some lessons. My oldest daughter, Jenna, she probably has 10, 15 kids that she does lessons with. And she'll go to their place if they have their own horse and, give them lessons at their place, not necessarily just come to our farm.
Right.
But, so, yeah, we do lessons, and her and I were both, I was a 4-H leader for, 30 years.
Yeah.
And she is. And so we really try to promote the youth
Yeah.
and any animals, but especially the horses.
Yeah. I always, I guess I always wanted to, when we got the cows in, I grew up on a dairy farm and we didn't have any horses,
Yeah.
But I always thought, how cool would it be to go out and you have to go out and get the cows in if they're out the pasture. And we did that on quads, 4-wheelers,
Yeah.
You go out at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's dark. You need a light, and they're spread out over acres and acres. So you round them up, and as soon as they hear that quad, they know, they start getting up, stretching their leg. But I always thought, how fun would this be to have a horse down here, to go and do it on a horse, just
Yeah.
go back to the way it was. I'm a
Yeah.
little nostalgic like that, I guess. But where are people still using horses for their day-to-day work? And obviously we know the Amish use them for their transportation. But other than that, in our area, and then maybe across the country or the world, what are horses like?
Yeah, in today's world, horses in general are not worked anymore. It's a pleasure. It's a more of a high-end thing to have horses than it is for work or to actually do something and get something done. Pleasure, and for your own pleasure, and trail riding, and for shows.
Yeah.
That's basically what horses are used for today.
Yeah. But they do still use them out west. A lot of them.
They do, but I don't even think out west, and I'm not 100% sure because I'm not out there. But I would think horses, they're still used for working cattle and stuff, but not as much. I would say the quads and stuff have probably taken over a lot.
Yeah.
And getting this is a little bit of a funny story. I knew a guy out west. He worked at a big ranch, and of course he used the quarter horse stock horses to do the cattle and stuff. But there's a lot of fence line out there. And he said that his one job was to ride that fence line, once a week or whatever, to make sure that it's not broke or down. And he bought himself a Paso Fino. And with that smooth ride, and the ones that can move out, the Corto and Largo, that type of Paso Fino, he said he cut his day in half because he could get around the fence a lot quicker and a lot smoother, and he wasn't, So, Paso Finos are used for different things. And in that particular case, that was a work environment where that horse was being used. But so that was an advantage, of Paso Fino.
Yeah, I love that.
Instead of trotting around, all day, you just glided around in that smooth.
I don't know. There isn't the epitome of cool, or it seems very romantic to be on a horse out in the mountains, or out west to bring round up cattle. You see the movies and stuff, and then if you watch Yellowstone, it's awesome, some of the things they do with these horses.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
it is. And I've only ever had the opportunity once or twice to go out west and ride. I was out in Utah one time up in the mountains and rode for about 2 or 3 days. I was actually doing clinics. I do a lot of clinics with Paso Finos, and it was for a Paso Fino group.
Okay.
I
So
went
you're just
out.
teaching them like a group of people.
A group of people. We had about, I think, 12 or 15 horses. It was a 2 or 3 day, and then I spent 2 or 3 days they took me out riding in the mountains and stuff. Nice. And so, yeah, it was really cool to go out there and ride. Beautiful country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I just started watching this show called Dropped. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Huh.
It's these two, they're from Pennsylvania, these two hunters. I'm almost positive they're from PA. Chris and can't think of the other guy. Kiefer's their last name. Anyway, they get dropped off in Alaska or in the Yukon in Canada, and they got to hunt 28, 36 days. They don't take food with them. They got all the equipment in the world. But in the Yukon, they went up for goats, sheep, and they had to they'd take horses, and they used these horses, and there was pack horses, and there was their horses that they rode. But these guys, they had a guide with them, and I think a couple guys that just basically took care of the horses.
Yeah.
And I mean, but they were talking about like these horses would kind of have to have something to eat wherever they were. A lot of times up there isn't much to eat, especially in where you're going. You know, there isn't much grass or trees, and it was just really neat to see how they used the horses for hunting.
Sure.
You know, and they're loading up, and these guys really, the one guy, they spent weeks with these horses, maybe 36 days.
Yeah.
Up until that hunt, that one guy said, I think I'd been on a horse 5 times in my whole life.
Yeah.
You know, but he had spent weeks and weeks, and they shot moose, and they got these plastic boxes draped over, like sawbucks on the top, and then they drape these plastic boxes, and they have to load it equal weight on each side, and they're very meticulous. They said the horses with priority, it's safety. The way this stuff is loaded has to be, every knot had to be tied just right, you know.
Yeah.
You didn't just slap it, throwing that noose over the back of that horse. It's all quartered and loaded, and they waste nothing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a funny story. Well, Gabe and my son Justin, they went out to Colorado for the first time this year elk hunting.
My cousin Gabe, he'll get that.
Yeah.
I messed that up on one.
Yeah, he's
my nephew, for crying out loud anyway.
He shot a nice mule deer, but they said, oh, you got to go with us next year. Well, when I was younger, their age, I did the Colorado thing, you know, out hunting. And my son Justin, they have all the gadgets and the GPSs and everything now, and I think it was like 40-some miles he walked, and then Gabe shot that mule deer, and then he had to walk in or shoot, you know, and shot the animal, and then it took him like 2 or 3 days to get that out. So anyhow, getting back to horses, I told him this year, I said, listen, I don't even really care to hunt. I'll go out, we'll rent 2 horses. I'll be when you shoot something, I'll come in and we'll pack it out. You know, and I would just enjoy the scenery and riding the horse as much as the hunt. You know, so I might take them up next year and do that.
Yeah, that'd be a good time.
Yeah,
I knew some guys that went out there, and I said, listen, I'll go. I'm not gonna hunt, but I'll help you pack meat. I'll keep the fire going at camp. I'll cook. You know, I do hunt, but I'm just like, I would just enjoy that, let alone, because that's the fun part. Once you kill that animal, then the work starts.
The work starts, yeah. And then getting to the horses, back to the horses. You know, those horses aren't necessarily bred for that, but that's what they're used for. So you have to train them to do that, just like I train a horse to go in the show ring, or train a horse to be. So my Paso Finos, I can trail ride them, you know, a lot. But to take one of my Paso Finos out there and say, okay, I'm going to go pack an elk out, that's not the best thing to do. You need to use the horses that are used to doing that. If I lived out there and had my Paso Finos, and I could, you know, train them and probably teach them to do that. Of course, the pack animals, they use a lot of horses, but they use a lot of mules too for just the pack animal. But as far as the riding horse, just getting from point A to point B, you know, the Paso Fino would be good for that. But yeah, those pack animals, they're trained to do that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat to watch them. And they can go a lot of places that a quad can't.
Oh, absolutely.
Or, you know, these trails and up across. I've seen videos, these horses coming down over a bank into a creek.
Yeah.
You know, and they're crossing these rivers.
It's pretty amazing where a horse can take you. It really is.
So, like, when you go to these shows, I know some of these are high dollar horses, and it's kind of interesting. But like, and I would imagine that better horse places in a show like that, the more money it would bring if it was sold.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing. I like competing. That's, a fun part for me is to train that horse and see if I can get it to that high level. As a trainer, that's what I really enjoy is getting that horse, the max out of that horse. And again, every horse can't be a national champion. Mm-hmm. Just like everybody that plays football can't be a quarterback, or top. Mm-hmm. So, but my job as the trainer is to take that horse to its peak ability. And then when you go in the show ring, you show against the other trainers that have tried to got the most and peak out of their horses. So it's fun for me, the competition, to see if I can get a horse to that quality or even better. But yes, it does put a value on the horse, right. More of a horse. So if I have a horse, and each division is a little bit different, that Fino, Performance, Pleasure, Confirmation is a little bit different as far as price goes. And in our Paso Finos, that Fino division, that's the high-priced horse, and that's why a lot of farms breed for that horse, because that's the high-dollar horse. And if you can go to nationals and be in the top 4 or 5, that puts more value on that horse. I actually started a program, it's probably been 7, 8 years ago. It's called the Trail Horse Testing Program, and that's where I do a lot of clinics at and travel around and do a lot of clinics with this program. It's kind of died off here lately. But anyhow, it was to put a value on the trail type of horse, because a lot of people have the misconception that, it's just a trail horse. It doesn't have, the value isn't as much. To me, the value should be more on a trail horse, because you're doing a lot more with that trail horse and you're encountering a lot different things out on the trail than you are just going around a ring in the show ring. But yes, to answer your question, the shows and the show horses, the better you can do at our national show, that puts a little bit more value on that horse.
And then that goes back to the pedigree.
That goes back to
okay, so if this Mustang came out of this show family, you want to get,
right.
It's going to be a high dollar animal. And so just on the business side of things, you obviously you want good, and if you're registered, that's where you get that proof. I guess that this is going to be a good horse, therefore you're going to pay more for a good horse.
Sure.
And so that's your receipt that this is quality guaranteed. You can tell by his pedigree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
What kind of horses they use in rodeos?
The bucking horses?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times they cross that with a draft horse to get the size, to get a little bit more power to buck.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But you'll see a lot of draft type horses bred with just a regular stalk horse or a quarter horse type. Those are the ones used for rodeo. But the actual headers and heelers, those horses, I would say 90% of them are quarter horses.
Yeah, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Lindsay took me for my 40th birthday out to see the PBR championship in Vegas.
Oh yeah,
freshman bull, and they have horses there to round up the bulls whenever it was only bull riding.
Yeah,
and it was their Super Bowl, I guess you could say.
Yeah, cool.
But I said that's how you'll get me to go to Vegas, if we can go to that. So she wanted to go.
Cool.
And it was a cool experience. I mean, seeing Vegas at least for a couple of days I would recommend to anybody. I mean, it's just neat.
Yeah.
But we got to go to that, and for the most part, these bulls know what to do when they're done. And rider jumps off, and they see that open gate. They usually go for it. They head out. But there was one bull that wouldn't leave the arena. And these two, I don't know what they call them, but there's two guys usually mounted on horses, and to help in case anything happened or whatever. But they had to rope this bull, and those two horses drug. I mean, these bulls are big. Those two horses drug that bull like he never even had a chance. It was like, you're coming whether you want to or not.
Yeah, they're powerful. Horses are very powerful.
Yeah,
and Again, that would probably be a quarter horse, stock type of horse that used for that.
Yeah.
A bigger horse, probably a 1,200 pound,
Yeah.
size horse.
Yeah, it's really neat.
I'm sure my Paso could maybe do that, but it probably have a little harder time dragging that bull out than a bigger, bigger horse.
Bulls, but like people sometimes there's like a fear of horses, I guess. Some people are afraid, and I guess because there's a healthy fear. Obviously, I tell my kids that all the time. You should have a healthy fear around any animal bigger than you. I mean, or dogs, whatever. But like, they all have different temperaments and attitudes and stuff like that, which is really neat because you see that in cattle, and steers. If somebody's showing a steer, you could have a big 1,200 pound black Angus steer, and he's the biggest baby you were ever around, and you can have one that's nuts.
Yeah.
So you got to have that healthy fear. But like with horses, they're a lot bigger than you, and then when you get on one's back, you're off the ground, and it could be, it's where people get hurt. But like, when is it like? I know it's rare, but I mean, like when people do get hurt on horses, what usually happens? Like,
well, we said a little bit earlier, I said with the kids and the 4-H and stuff, that's the one thing that I really try to teach is the safety being around a horse. And let me just give you an example. Say you're brushing a horse and he steps over and steps on your toe. Even a Paso Fino that's 800 pounds, he could break your toes, break your foot, He didn't mean to do that. He just stepped over. He might have, moved his body a little bit. So you really got to be aware, and there's certain things. I always make my kids have one hand on the horse at all times so they can push themselves away, And so there's things that you can do to be real safe around horses, and they are big animals, and they can hurt you accidentally. Yeah. So, but then to have a horse, and this is coming from a trainer's perspective, you need to think as yourself as a trainer. You need to be working that horse all the time, not allowing that horse to do certain things to make that you and that horse safer. But the biggest thing is probably people getting on horses that aren't 100% broke and getting bucked off. I knock on wood. I haven't had really any major injuries. I've had, been kicked and I've been bucked off. I actually got bucked off this summer and I hit pretty hard. And I don't like to come off.
Is that like training a new horse?
Yeah. And I do that groundwork and my foundation exercises, and that usually takes me a month before I actually even think about getting on a horse. But it's still not 100% proof, It's a little danger involved every time I get on a horse. This summer I was riding a horse and it tripped. And when it tripped, it went the whole way down. I went out over, the horse rolled, and luckily I was out of the road. So, there's definitely some dangers, but I would say getting bucked off. Another big thing where injuries come from a horse that you don't think of is if a horse isn't in pasture 24/7, which even at my place, my training horses are in stalls. I let them out in the round pen, try to get them to be out. But sometimes it's just not. They can't get out because you physically don't have the place for them to do that. So. And a lot of boarding farms and stuff put horses in at night, let them out in the morning or whatever. But anyhow, I've seen a lot of accidents where people will let a horse out in the pasture, and that's their free time. So they go to take the halter off of that horse. It runs, and as soon as it goes to run, it kicks out. And I know a lot of people that have been kicked by turning a horse out into the pasture. So, it's really important to know how you got to turn that horse around and face the gate, and you got to make sure that you're out of the road. And when you take that halter off, because they know it's their playtime, man, and they, a lot of times they kick up. It's just a natural instinct that they do to kick up, and there's lots of accidents happen on the ground, but I'd say most people get bucked off.
Yeah. But there's ways to be. Just to do everything safely, you got to know what you're doing.
You got to know what you're doing around the horses, and for people coming in, that's why lessons are important and stuff. Is to go to someone that's been around, that knows how to safety around horses. And I can say this now because I've been doing it a long time. I've gotten a lot of experience. But if you're new to the breed, it's easier to go and learn off someone that already has the experience than it is to learn for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're new to horses and getting into horses, and I recommend you go to a place that's handled horses for, trainers and stuff that handled horses for years.
Jenna is very good with the kids. She gave my girls a lesson once or twice, and they enjoyed that. But
sure. And this is a whole other subject, and I don't want to get on it too much. But you have your trainers online, everything's online, social media and stuff, and there's just so much information out there, and there's good information. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of these, armchair trainers or whatever you want to call them, 20 years old, and they're telling you do this, do that, and do this, and maybe they're correct, but experience goes a long way in the horse industry, and I think in any industry like that, right. You need to get yourself educated if you're getting into especially horses.
I saw this barrel racer. There was this kid, and this video probably went viral or whatever, but it's not too hard to find. And there's many of them like it. These kids get on these barrel horses, and I mean, they're hanging on for dear life, but these kids are controlling that horse and I mean, what are they? They probably weigh about as much as the head and neck on that horse.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, that animal's just taking off, and it's pretty impressive watching these kids get on there. And I mean, they grew up around it. They've taken the time. You get to know the horse. You practice. You train, and then you can do things like that safely.
And overall, there's a danger in any sport that you play or anything that you do, and I don't think horses are that much dangerous in any other thing that you do. But
it's way heavier, and you're off the ground a little higher. And that's where
you just need to educate yourself, and when you're getting into the horses.
Yeah. Well, what else do we miss? Do we miss anything?
I don't know. My family, I've had 3 kids, Jenna, Annie, and Justin, and the girls were really always into horses. Justin, not so much, but he would ride, and he still rides with me a little bit. But it was a family thing for my family. When I was growing up, it was kind of my dad and I. But it's a family thing for us now. And it's just kind of a way of life, and shows every year, and clinics, and going to, I got the horse expo in March up in Harrisburg. I've been going up there for 30 years I'm one of the clinicians. So it's just a way of life for us now. Horses, and it'll always be, and I'll always have horses, and they'll be a part of my life.
Like the horses that you raise, like you said, you raise a handful on your farm and train yourself, and they go to other places, or you keep one for yourself or whatever. But like, where's the farthest that one of your horses have gone, or best that like you've done really good in a show or anything like that?
Yeah, so as far as the show ring goes, and I don't breed specifically just for show horses. I try to breed a quality Paso Fino that is good enough to show, but at the same time has a good mind that the average person can get on it and go trail riding, or just be a pleasure horse. So that's the type of horse that I raise, and not the Fino horse, the horse that can move out, because that's my market. I don't have a lot of people wanting Fino horses to show. I have horses that want to be able to pleasure ride, and if the horse is a quality Paso Fino, it still should be able to go into pleasure division and be competitive. So I've had quite a few national champions. I'm going to say about two years ago, I had a 3-year-old first year showing, and he became a national champion. It was a gelding. Ended up selling that horse. The lady doesn't show. She just trail rides and enjoys her horse, and I just talked to her the other day, and she said she loves the horse, best horse she's ever had. I just delivered one up to New York. I sold it to a guy up in New York about 2 weeks ago, I guess. Delivered that horse up there. But I have As a trainer, I get, and again, the Paso Fino breed is not a big breed, so I have a lady in Florida right now and I just told you, Florida has a lot of trainers, but she sent her horse clear up to Pennsylvania. Wow. Now, she was from Pennsylvania, and I trained her horses before. She's now moved to Florida, and, likes the way I train. So, I got horses from all over, really, that I've trained. And over the years, I had 2 or 3 clients in Canada.
I was going to ask you, any international customers?
Canada. And then I had the opportunity 2 years ago to go to Germany. I judged the Paso Finos over in Germany. Okay. So, as far as a judge and the horses, I've been able to go and travel different places. Yeah. But trying to set up a clinic, the people in Canada want me to come up there and do a clinic, so hopefully I'll get up there. And like I said, as far as I was out in Utah, that Paso Fino group out there, we did a 3-day clinic. I think it was 2 years I went out there. I did a lot of clinics down in Texas, so I've been pretty much all over the United States. Been able to travel, and probably wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for the horses.
Yeah, like I've been on horses several times. I'm no expert rider or anything, but I can get on a horse and whatever. But like the Paso Fino, I would imagine that it would benefit somebody to understand how to actually use that animal to its what it's used for, to its proper ability, because that's where you're going to get that smooth ride. And like it's going to do it somewhat automatically because it's just its natural gait, like you said. But like I would want to say, like I would want to understand how do I actually operate this animal to the best of its ability, so I get the best out of it. Like versus maybe another horse where you get on and it's going to gallop and it's not as smooth or whatever. But is that the case? Like, I mean, obviously every horse you got to learn about that horse, but like I would imagine that the Paso Fino, you kind of have to, because it looked to me like when they were doing that Fino, like it's like you're just kind of it's like driving a car with your foot on the gas and on the brake at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of reminded me of.
Yeah, and that's exactly that Fino horse. When you look at it, that's kind of exactly what you want. And in any of the divisions, and we want what we call lightness. We don't want to be pulling that horse back. We want to just hold him there. Yeah. But then with our butt and our legs, we're pushing the horse forward. Yeah, but we're saying with our hands, don't go any faster. Just pick up and then when you just come down a little bit onto the average pleasure horse, you can still push him up in and help him collect a little bit, and that's where you need to learn to be able to do that. Because if you just sit in a Paso Fino and you do nothing, eventually, and you let that horse's neck go down and you're just sitting there and doing nothing, eventually he will get out of gait, even though he's really quality and stuff. So you do got to learn how to ride a Paso. If you're riding, and I'll take an example, a quarter horse, we've been talking about it all day, trotting, you can get on there and really all you got to do is control that speed, whether he's going fast or slow, but he's still going to trot. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it isn't quite as hard. So Paso Fino, you got to learn to keep into that gait all the time, and it really doesn't take long. Like you come to the barn, and if I give you just 3 or 4 lessons, I'd be able to kind of teach you this, to kind of push that forward a little bit and keep him into that gait. But yes, you do got to learn to ride him. On the other hand, they're so smooth that your balance, it might be a little harder to ride a trotting horse because you got to keep a little bit more better balance. So, the best of both worlds. I know my kids grew up with the Paso Finos, but also I had them ride trotting horses because it was just a little bit different way of riding. And I think you get the best of both worlds when you can ride a trotting horse and a gaited horse. It just makes you a better rider all the way around. Yeah. Versus if you only ride a gaited horse, you're probably not going to be as good on the trotting horse, and vice versa. If you're real good on the trotting horse and never ridden a gaited horse, when you switch over to the gaited horse or ride a gaited horse, it's just a little different adjustment you got to make. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, if anything, I'm like weird like this. I kind of like think of the worst case scenarios. I have a wood burner in case my electric goes out. I burn it for pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to know it's there.
It's there.
But for some reason, all hell breaks loose. We don't have, for some reason, can't get to a gas pump. Well, guess what? The people with horses are going to be, they're going to be highly sought after again, just like they were, when this country first became a country. I mean, like horses were everything.
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat to think like that. Like you do a lot of things, like some people preppers and this and that, and they think of worst case scenarios. But having that transportation could be, key. So find a horse.
Yeah.
Go to Rick and get a horse.
Yeah, the horse, and again, we talked about it a little bit before, but the horse is more of a luxury thing in today's world than it used to be.
Yeah, I love seeing them in their natural use or intended use in the environment. It is really cool. Like I said, I love watching those videos, those kids on them barrel horses, and even the adults is cool too. But to see that kid on that powerful animal, it is pretty neat. And then I don't know, this when Yellowstone was popular, it was like you got seeing them take those horses and spin, slide, head those steers off. It's pretty cool.
And I watched that Yellowstone series too, and it was great. But I loved the horse scenes, and some of them was real trainers and real reining horse people they used. It wasn't like stunt people or stunt horses.
Taylor Sheridan, he's a real deal.
Yeah, raising horses and riding them, and that one scene.
I think that's why it was so good because how could anybody make that without actually knowing what? I mean, he actually does. He owns that 4-6's ranch now, correct?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I forget the actual saying or whatever, but said about the value of those horses, and they had said there was a couple $1 million in the ring there at that one time, and it quite possibly was. There was 6, 7, 8 horses out there working, and those reining horses, they bring big money in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a top prospect or a top show reining horse.
That's definitely a luxury item. It's like for those guys, that's like a flash, I guess, or a flex. I'll say, but take nothing away from the animal. They are actually really good at what they do.
Oh yeah, they're incredible athletes, and our Paso Finos are top shelf show type horses, and are very athletic, great trail type horses. There's always a value to that horse. I don't make my living though off the value of the horse. It's more the training and teaching other people and stuff. It's kind of icing on the cake when I sell one of those horses or sell a horse. And of course, I would love to sell a $100,000 horse, but that's not really my main purpose. The main, to make a living is training them and teaching people how to ride them, and the selling of them is just a icing on the cake.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean that's understandable. You don't want to sell a horse that isn't trained, that's what you do.
Right.
Yeah, very cool. So can you have any social media or anything where anybody can find R&S Paso Finos? Or?
I have a website. I don't use that website as much anymore, and my daughter Jenna usually is the one up there. Yeah. But I have a Facebook page, and that Facebook page, R&S Paso Fino, that Facebook page, any clinic that I have coming up or anything like that, we post on there. And horses for sale, client horses or, whatever, we post them there on the Facebook. So,
very good.
That's about it.
All right. Well, I don't know. I'm no expert, but I learned a lot about Paso Finos today. And horses in general, which, was actually fun for me, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I see you when you trim my donkey's feet, but maybe we'll come back and we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah. Sure, and as a trainer, right after here, I got to go get a load of hay. So,
all right,
there's different things that those horses require all the time, and that's one thing: the hay and feeding them and cleaning up after.
We didn't even get into nutrition, but they, like you said, it takes a good bit to care for them, and
Yeah, I usually feed about 20 horses. My own horses, I have about 10, and I usually have anywhere from, 7, 8, 10 horses in training.
Yeah.
So I'm usually feeding about 20 horses, and I'm not by any means a big operation, but that's still quite a feed bill and hay bill, and you're trying to feed that many horses.
And I think you said this, but the horses that you board at your place are horses that you're training for other people.
Yeah, I'm basically not a boarding facility. I'm more of a training facility.
Because there's a difference. There are people that just want a horse. They don't have a place to take it, so they take it to a boarder where they can go and ride there and do
their own thing. A lot of times, boarding places will have an outside trainer if you need help to come in or whatever. But I'm my only trainer. I'm one man show. But the older I get, obviously, there's going to come a point where I'm not going to be able to get on a bunch of them young horses anymore, and so then I might turn into more, get a couple more boarders instead of riding, but. I hope I got quite a few years left here of training those horses. And, I know we're almost finishing up here, but when people bring me horses, I usually don't take the problem horses anymore. When I was in my 20s and 30s, if a horse was a bucking horse or rare or whatever, I would take that horse on, but... now in my life, when they say I have that, I take it to a younger guy, so I don't try to take that on. But I start horses. I have a Morgan horse that, in fact, today I'm going to try to get some film of her to send to the owner or film of him. And I think today will be maybe like the third or fourth ride that I've had on him. So I still enjoy that and getting horses under saddle. But that horse didn't have any bad habits or anything. He's only 3 years old. So... that's the type of training that I do a lot of and still do. But those problem horses, I let that for the younger guys, younger ladies and younger guys to do that.
In the construction industry, that's roofing. We pass that off on to the younger guys starting out. But, all right, Rick, I really appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, all right. R&S Paso Finos, check them out. And I'll put that link on the description in the YouTube when this goes up. So
perfect.
Somebody wants to find you and get you to train at Paso Fino.
Sure. Or come out for a ride.
We'll tag it to the Paso Fino community. We'll see this hopefully. And
but if you've never ridden one, come to the farm. We'll put you on one, ride one, experience that smooth ride.
Yeah. National champ horse, judging national championships, international sales. Very good. Very cool. You just never know who's in Somerset County, and I've done that all my life right here in Somerset County. For the last 25, 30 years, I've been making a living doing it. I did a little bit other things there, but for the last 30 years, I've been making a living doing horses. Very cool. All right. Well, thanks for sharing, Rick.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks.
You. Thanks again to SDC Building Center for supporting the Route 281 podcast. I use them for my contracting work, and I can tell you they're the real deal when it comes to service and quality. So the next time that you're planning a project, stop in and see them at SDC Building Center.